Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today on a gray, rainy day. It's not the satisfying kind of rainy day where the rain is just pouring down all day. Instead, it's the irritating kind of rainy day where it rains buckets for a little while, and then it stops for a little while, and then it starts for a little while, then it stops for a little while. So you don't know, you and your tiny little bean don't know whether it's okay to go outside. If, for instance, your tiny little bean does not want to go outside in the rain, does not want to be outside in the rain, it's maddening. It certainly precludes the long, lung clearing walk that we both enjoy. No way to do that. So we're making do. I'm playing a lot more with her. I'm cuddling a lot more with her. She's not all that up for play anymore. She doesn't play with other dogs ever. She's never played with other dogs, even when she was a little puppy. But she's perfectly okay playing with people. Or was. She's less interested in doing that now that she's 7. She's less interested in just straight up playing, but very much interested in cuddling. In a way. She won't cuddle with anybody else, but she does. There's a way that she cuddles with me. But we're doing a lot of that, but there's no substitute for that lung clearing walk. For the kind of walk that leaves you slightly disheveled, more disheveled in my case, and slightly sweaty, and good and tired. A nice long walk in the country. We can't do that when the country is all mud and there's rain around every corner. So we have to forestall. But it hasn't stopped the mail. So I've got a few packages here. We can go through those and see what's of interest. We can start with a periodical, one of the great book review periodicals, the London Review of Books. I went through this, of course, but the first thing I did was look at the letters column. And in this letters column, 3 writers break a rule that I would like to impose on the literary world. Not 1, not 2, but 3 writers write in response to a review of their own book. As I've covered on this channel many times before, and as at least one of these writers must know, there is no acceptable way to do that. If you have a complaint about a review, well, first of all, good and properly pipe down, because the 100,000 books on the left of you and the 100,000 books on the right of you didn't get a review of any kind in the London Review of Books. So, first of all, pipe down. Your one and only reaction should be gratitude. But if the reviewer has stepped out of line, done something that might hurt the reputation of your book or decline some of the readers of the letter column from reading the book, well, okay, then you might want to register a complaint. Register your publisher and have them register it to the editor of the paper. But you're going to see that none of these 3 letters is the type of thing where that would work. So I'm cutting these authors a bit of slack. These are not complaints that they could register to their publisher. They are not, strictly speaking, they're either not errors of fact, or in one case there's an error of fact, but it's an error of fact that the author wanted to seize upon in order to bloviate pedantically. So let's just start with the bloviator. The bloviator, of course, is Robin Lane Fox, who wouldn't go to his publisher with a complaint anyway. He would, of course, square off with any journal that did him wrong. Some authors are incorrigible. And he just recently had a book, Homer and his Iliad, which I liked a lot. That was out last year in the United States. Somebody wrote a review of it in the London Review of Books, and he wrote in. I'm not going to read you the whole letter because most of the letter is him bloviating, but and that's the reason why he wrote. He didn't write just to correct. The correction could be easily done. But the first paragraph corrects. Angie Mlinko, reviewing my book Homer and his Iliad, states that I climbed Mount Gargaron to describe the carpet of golden crocuses on which Zeus and Hera made love in the Iliad. Jonathan Brown then writes to say that, alas, Lane Fox climbed the wrong mountain. They are both wrong. I have never climbed this mountain, neither does my book say that I did. And then he goes on, Oxford Donish style, to debate the pros and cons of what mountain might it have been, and what about the crocuses, are they actually indigenous, and what about Mount Gargaron, and where's that name derived from? He goes on and on. But he does correct an error. The writer of the review, Jonathan Brown writes a letter saying that Robin Lane Fox is in error as to what happened when on what mountain in the Iliad. And it turns out the error wasn't Robin Lane Fox's. He doesn't ever say that in his book. So it was misquoted in the review. That led to a reprimand that he didn't deserve. All right, so that's instance number 1. But it keeps happening. We'll finish off with just a bit of pure pretension, just pure pedantry, the type of thing you go to a literary letters column for. But where is the other one? Oh, yes, Penguin Classics. In his review of my Penguin Classics edition of Upton Sinclair's Oil, Edmund Gordon quotes my introduction where I write, quote, "How to more properly hate oil becomes both an ideological impasse and a literary plot," close quote. From this, Gordon generates the claim that I argue the novel's ultimate target is oil, as distinct from the oil industry. In fact, I make the opposite argument, that Sinclair offers a structural critique of oil capitalism, its industrial impacts, habits of mind and emotion, and modern cultural traditions. This is in keeping, I hope, with my adaptation of the quote from Adorno's Minima Moralia, quote, "One must have tradition in oneself to hate it properly." We'll see. The London Review of Books seldom indulges in what the TLS, I think, looks for, which is an ongoing running debate between a critic and an author. I don't trust this disclaimer from the author of that introduction to Upton Sinclair's Oil. I don't trust it. I don't actually have that Penguin Classic. It never got sent to me. So I don't have that introduction to consult. But this does not sound like a convincing denial. This sounds like the author could easily be construed as saying that the object of the hatred in the book is oil itself rather than the oil industry. We shall see. Maybe there will be a brouhaha. You never know. And then the third author writing in about a review, and this time it was a favorable review. The author is Anna Reid, who wrote a book called A Nasty Little War, which I read and reviewed. We saw it on this channel. It was, I think, quite good. She writes in her insightful review of my book, A Nasty Little War, on the disastrous Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War of 1918-1920, Sheila Fitzpatrick misreads its relevance for Russian policy today. That was a selling point that the publicists were going after for A Nasty Little War, that, hey, if you need a reason to review this, anything to jockey it to the top of the pile, well, it connects with modern day news with the war between Russia and Ukraine. Because the Ukrainian national movement was weak then does not mean that it is weak now, V-I-Z, period, instead of the word C, which is the exact same number of letters but not pretentious. Viz. The country's determined self-defense over the past 9 years. And because the Ukrainian National Army committed pogroms then, as did all warring sides, does not mean that Ukraine is anti-Semitic now, viz. Its election of a wildly popular Jewish president. Rather, the lesson of the intervention is that Putin will ultimately fail for the same reason the whites did, because his regime is brutal and corrupt, because he has no political program beyond the nostalgia for past glories, and most of all because he cannot accept that the non-Russian nationalities do not want to return to Moscow's rule. This is obviously bad. You don't want to do this. This is not Anna Reid writing in and saying you got a fact wrong. Robin Lane Fox is correcting himself. Notice Robin Lane Fox was quiet about the error in the original review. Finally, he decides to take a hand when someone else writes in to reprimand him based on that error. Okay, fine. And the guy who wrote the introduction for the new Upton Sinclair edition of Oil, I don't know that I believe that claim. But this isn't even that. This is an interpretation war. This is Anna Reid saying, I don't agree with my reviewer's interpretation of the events. Well, you're not getting paid to review your own book. The reviewer is. And if we're lucky, they'll have their own interpretation of things. Your interpretation obviously did not convince, or convinced in a different way than you intended. That's no reason for you to bellyache about getting a review in the London Review of Books. And also, not least to point out how idealistic this is, how pie in the sky ridiculous this is. It's not a corruption that will stop this, and it's not a failure on Putin's part to understand that broken away satellite states don't want to be reabsorbed into Moscow's orbit. I think he knows that. Those aren't guarantees that he's going to fail. They certainly aren't why the whites failed. So I don't know what. It's just political idealism on Anna Reid's part. I think it's pretty obvious that the Russian invasion of Ukraine will not fail. If by success we mean that eventually they force either Zelensky or his successor to the negotiating table to carve away parts of their territory. That's all that land aggressors in Europe, that's all they ever do. They take a little bite, and then they back away to the negotiating table and say, well, that's all I want, and then they take another little bite, and then they take another little bite. And that's what's going to happen here. I would argue I'm no geopolitical expert, but I want to finish up with a brief letter that ordinarily the letters pages of literary journals are places where pedants can sound off, where they can write in and say so and so in a footnote to such and such mentions X Y Z. But if memory serves, and memory does not serve. You have ransacked your library and your local research branch. You have all the books in front of you. Memory is not serving you. You're just trying to sound. Anyway, the straining of tiny little points to make an imaginary score is what tends to happen in these columns, and they save the best for last. I'm not going to mention the fact that this letter comes from North Yorkshire. I'm going to try not to stress that fact. I'm trying in my off hours not to think about Yorkshire, and it's not working. I feel the hoofbeats of doom approaching. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But this is someone who's writing from North Yorkshire, writing about the origin of the gay novel. And this is the letter. It's very short. Tom Crew writes that Alan Hollinghurst's The Swimming Pool Library, quote, has no women in it. Evidently, he didn't register the brief telephone conversation Will has with his sister Flippa. Okay. All right. You got him. So there are actually women mentioned in the Swimming Pool Library. There are no when Crew mentioned that it has no women in it, he meant it has no women characters. He knew that. He knew that you knew that, and the writer of that letter knows that. All right. So for 4 lines, there was a woman on the other end of the phone in the book. Okay, great. Yes, we get a mention of Ahab's wife in Moby Dick as well. It's ridiculous. Okay. All right. So that's that. That was that one periodical. Then we got another periodical. This is going to be a little bit frustrating for me. I haven't read either of these yet. I read the letters page of the LRB. I haven't read anything of the New Yorker, which has teachers leading their children in yellow vests with a leash connecting them all through the chaos, the towering chaos of downtown New York City. Very, very good cover. The Bean and I pass lines of children like this all the time. There's a meadow, a fenced-in meadow, not far from here, about 2 minutes from here. It's a lovely place to it's elevated off the main pathway. No one goes there. It's within easy sight of the street, so you're not secluded or anything like that. It's a lovely place to take kids, to let them sit on the grass, let them run around a bit. But it borders a busy road, so you've got to have them on one of these little duck chains like this. The Bean and I pass those chains all the time. I always have to warn her, baby, please control yourself. Please control yourself. I always think of the teachers in a situation like this. I don't want the situation going out of control for them. I don't want the kids going out of control when they're trying their hardest to keep them under control. Frida is adorable. She's an adorable little dog, and she's very friendly and very pert. She notices everything and looks right at you. She's not one of these dogs that has, or like my beagles, that had their nose on the ground the whole time, didn't pay attention to you at all. She notices, and children, she looks like a toy, so children love to run up to her. I always have to tell her to behave herself. Although, I gotta say, I don't know how those teachers find the courage. I don't know how any teachers do. In America, in the United States, yes, the field is lovely, and it's open, and it's clean, and it's beyond a stone wall, so there's no danger of a child accidentally running out into the road. But it's within easy sight of a lunatic with a military-style rifle, a rifle that fires 1,000 rounds a minute. So I guess it's a quintessentially American thought that I can't not pay attention to that. I think actually one of the letters in here also mentions that. But the thing that I want to point out about this, I haven't looked at it yet. I looked at the table of contents, and the table. Naturally, I went straight for the books coverage, and the books coverage this time is 2 biographies, which is a cause for joy. Maggie Doherty reviews the new biography of Carson McCullers, but there's also a new biography of a review of the new biography of Lord Byron, and I'm not going to read it because it's by Anthony Lane, who usually does the movie criticism for the New Yorker, but here they're letting him loose on a book, and that's doubly painful because A, I'm not going to read it, and B, it's probably going to be quite good. Anthony Lane, I think, is much better as a book writer, writing about books, than he is about writing about movies. But I'm not going to read it in any case because of his review of The Incredibles Part 2, The Incredibles 2, in which he lapses into an erotic fantasy, an explicit erotic fantasy of his. I'm not going to read a piece by this guy as long as that is official New Yorker policy, that you get to do that. And it is, because he was not disciplined. He was not removed from his movie beat. He was not fired. Therefore, the editorial board at the New Yorker agrees that he can slip into pornography anytime he feels like it. So I don't want to read that, so I'm going to just avoid his work. And that means, in this case, ordinarily I don't care, because usually he's reviewing some recent movie that doesn't have any Gojira in it, doesn't have any talking apes in it, doesn't have any Kryptonians in it, so I don't care. But here he's reviewing a biography of Lord Byron. I'm going to have to miss it completely, except in blurbs, and I'll just have to assume that down the line for the paperback, the publisher X's out any erotic stuff that he happens to do in his review. But he has not apologized for that. The New Yorker has not reprimanded him. They did not even suspend him. They have not fired him. Therefore, it is okay. Therefore, there is any chance in the world that it could happen again. So he's off limits to me, as long as that's true. But anyway, let's look at the books. Now that we're 20 minutes in here, let's look at the books. So when you get 20 minutes in, that's what you can expect from someone who diarrheas out 5 videos a day. That's what you can expect. Boy, oh boy, what booktubers have said from time immemorial. It's absolutely true. You can be swamped with positive, wonderful, friendly comments in your comments field. In my case, in my inbox and on Voxer. All it takes is the one a-hole comment to just like a popcorn kernel that's just stuck in your teeth and won't get out. But we'll try to ignore it. Okay, all right. Oh, great. All right, this comes out in May. This is Vows, the Modern Genius of an Ancient Rite. And it's by an author that a lot of you will know, Cheryl Mendelson, who did the big fat book, Home Comforts. How many of you have read that book? It looks deceiving. It looks like it's just a kind of Betty Crocker-style compendium of home tips and on canning and line drying your clothes and whatnot. It is not. It is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It is all of those things. But it is also so much more than those things. Oh my God. If you are at your used bookstore, your charity shop, a yard sale, and you see Cheryl Mendelson's big fat book, Home Comforts, grab it. Even if, in fact, especially if you think it's not the kind of book you would like. I thought that way. And there are probably, 4 dozen little factoids from that book that are permanently, talk about lodged, they're permanently lodged in my mind. I'll never get rid of them. But this is about wedding vows, which sends a cold shudder down my spine. But we'll read this anyway and see here. In the West, marrying is so thoroughly identified with ceremonial promises that taking vows is a synonym for getting married. So it's a surprise to realize that this custom is actually a historical and anthropological oddity. Most of the world, for most of history, married without making promises. And there's a reason for that. Marriage by vow presupposes free choice, and free choice makes a love match possible. It's a very modern arrangement. Makes sense, right? Marriage was not a free choice most of the time in most of history, so what would be the point of exchanging vows? This book is both a moving memoir of 2 marriages and a thoughtful meditation on marriage itself. The author tackles the sociology of commitment through our most traditional promises and shows why they endure. In considering the kind of marriage these vows entail, she helps answer some of life's most urgent and personal questions. Could I, would I, or should I make these promises to someone? What difference does it make? 6 out of 10 people who make these promises then break them. They seem to go on living just fine. Using history and literature, the book describes the parameters of the behavior that traditional vows promise, and in so doing answers a whole series of other questions. Why did wedding vows arise only in the West? Why are they recited in weddings around the world today? Why have these vows lasted for nearly 1,000 years? Why does the kind of marriage promised in the vows, survive? Well, okay, it doesn't survive. It's a gigantic institutional failure. If you had the same kind of failure rates in cars or planes, no one would use them. No one would be allowed to use them. But I get the point. The only reason that I get a shiver down my spine, it's not the subject in an abstract kind of way, and it's certainly not the author. Thanks to Home Comforts, This author has unlimited credit in the Bank of Steve. So it's not that. It's the subject in miniature. It's my experience with wedding vows, specifically individually written wedding vows, that are the most horrifying things typically that you will experience in civilian life. Typically they are. And I mentioned the other day in a video something that surprised a lot of you, a lot more of you than I thought. I said I don't go to weddings anymore. I don't go to funerals. I don't go to public events like that almost at all. And some of you were surprised by that. And I can attest beyond a shadow of it. With funerals, it's easy. Funerals are they're a religious ceremony that is based on the fact that the person inside the box is not really dead, that they can actually do a head count on who's there in the crowd. And I don't believe that. I fundamentally don't believe that. I don't care if anyone else knows that I don't believe that, or I don't want to convince anyone how much I love the person in the box. I don't have anything to convince anyone of. So, aside from the person who was alive. When the person was alive, I wanted them to know. But after that, they're gone. They're just a bunch of chemicals. Where was that going? Oh, right. With funerals, it's easy, because to me, they're inherently religious, so they don't have any interest for me at all. With wedding vows, you might think, well, you'd go to weddings anyway, because they're fun. You get to meet a whole bunch of people. It's a very happy occasion. There can often be quite enjoyable. There's usually free liquor, free wine, maybe. Well, there'll be the bridegroom's party. there'll be his party of smartly dressed young men. Not all of whom will be busy with the bridegrooms, with the bridesmaids off in the shrubbery. But no, you would think, but no. And I can tell you, the thing that drove me away, the thing that broke me, I remember it vividly, I remember the exact occasion, was personally written wedding vows. I was at a wedding, I was largely enjoying myself, and then the couples exchanged their vows, and it was excruciating, just excruciating. And I have seen a lot of video footage of privately written vows since then. Just say the vows that your church service provides, okay? Don't try to Wordsworth it yourself. It's so horrible, so absolutely horrible. I have never known an exception, never. And then 4 weddings and a funeral came along and gave everybody ideas. So this is going to bring back some flashbacks of pretty horrible stuff. If you've got a wedding on the horizon, everyone in the crowd wants to get to the dinner and the aforementioned wine. Do not Wordsworth it. Just read preset vows. Your service, no matter what denomination it is, will provide you with quite lovely vows. You're going to break them anyway, probably by the end of the day. So don't bother. Just don't bother with it. It's anyway. This is a fascinating subject. I've never read a book on wedding vows before, and to be written by this author, that is even better. So let's move on. Now that we're done with my trauma, let's move on to the next one here. Oh, good. And this one does have a sheet. Thank God. A lot of times I'm not getting sheets with these things. Which means what? What does that mean? Does that mean that these are being sent from warehouses instead of from publishing houses? I should ask my publishing buddies about that and see. So what have we got here? All right, this comes out at the end of March. This is Provincials, Postcards from the Peripheries by Susanna Roy, with what is now a rarity, an ugly American cover. That is rare. Now, I'm so accustomed to American book covers being good now that we get something like this. This was all of 2022. Now it stands out. Let's see what we have here. Who is a provincial? Okay, if that question is not rhetorical, I would like to answer it. It's someone from the outlying outskirts of the capital city of the same country. Bet that's not what you're going to say. Let's take a look and see. The author assembles a cast of writers, artists, filmmakers, cricketers, tourist guides, English teachers, lovers and letter writers, private tutors, and secret keepers whose lives and work provide varied answers to that question. I already answered that question. It is not a form of sexual discrimination. It is not a form of sexual discrimination. You are a provincial if you are not from the capital. And you are more of a provincial in increasing increments the smaller the place you hail from that is not the capital. It has nothing to do with sex. It's going to be the title of my memoir. I swear. It's going to be the title of my history of the 21st century is, it has nothing to do with sex. Combining memoir with literary, sensory, and emotional history of an ignored people. Okay, there's no such thing as sensory history. And we're not talking about ignored people. This is not a matter of discrimination. This is a matter of geography. The author challenges the metropolitan's dominance to reclaim the joyous dignity of provincial life, its tics and taunts, enthusiasms, and tragicomedies. No one is claiming that it doesn't have those things. It is merely a distinction between where you live and where you don't live. Ignored people. All right, we're in for a sleigh ride. Let's do the last paragraph and then we'll be done. In a wide-ranging series of, quote, postcards from the peripheries of India, Europe, America, and the Middle East, the author brings us deep into the imaginative worlds of those who have carried their provinciality like a birthmark. Now, you carry it with a dumb accent. Okay? You carry it with a dumb accent. Ranging from Rabindranath Tagore to William Shakespeare, John Clare to the Bhakti poets, T.S. Eliot to J.M. Coetzee, V.S. Naipaul to the Brontes, and Kishore Kumar to Annie Ernaux, she celebrates the provincial's humor and hilarity, playfulness and irony, belatedness, and instinct for carefree accidents and freedom. Oh, well, that took a turn. That does sound like fun. Oh, all right. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I thought you'd get a good four-corker rant, but no, that if she's going to celebrate the fun of this, I mean, I know there's discrimination. I know that that in ye olden times, in the 1920s or 1820s, if you had four men in an office for assistant manager job, and one of them opened his mouth and out came a provincial dialect, there'd be chuckles, and he would probably lose the job on that account. I'm not saying that people haven't been hurt by the discrimination that comes in the difference between someone who's from the metropolis and from the provinces, but maybe I've just had enough of that kind of book. In the last 4 years, maybe I've just had enough of that kind of book. And it doesn't sound like this is going to be that kind of book. A lot of those things were good. Humor and hilarity. Those are the same thing, but that's all right. Playfulness and irony, belatedness and instinct for carefree accidents and freedom. That sounds like fun. Her account of provincial life offers an alternative portrait of our modern world. Okay. Okay, fine by me. This comes out at the end of the month. That sounds like fun. All right. Wow. All right. That was a surprise. Now we'll do the last package, and then we'll be done. As I noticed that although the light is brightening outside, the rain is increasing. I'm assuming that means that the increased rain is about to peter off completely. So maybe the bean and I should stretch out. We have to just dash. I have to keep a careful eye on the weather so that we can dash out for any kind of opportunity here. Let's see here. Oh, what is this next one? This will be our last one. Are you going to tell me anything useful about yourself? Okay, this comes out in May. This is a finished copy for May. I think we saw this already. This is by Michael Diegler, and it is Early Sobrieties. Did we see this already? Don't worry about what Dennis Monk did when he was drinking. He's sober now, ready to rejoin the world of leases and paychecks, reciprocal friendships, and healthy romances. If only the world would agree to take him back. When his working stiff parents kick him out of their suburban home mere months into his fragile sobriety, the 26-year-old spends his first dry summer couch surfing through South Philadelphia, struggling to find a place for himself in the throng of adulthood. Monk's haphazard pilgrimage leads him through a city in flux, growing, gentrifying, haunted by its history and its unrealized potential. Everyone he knew from college seems to be doing better than him. That's a mistake. Common mistake, but still a mistake. It's not. Everyone he knew from college seems to be doing better than he. You're going to put him in there because it's colloquial usage, but the key is follow the sentence out by repeating the verb. That will lead you invariably to the right usage. So in this sense, it would be everyone he knew from college seems to be doing better than him is. They are doing, he is doing, not him is doing. The minute you follow it out with the verb, you're not going to repeat the verb. But the minute you follow it out, you see what the correct word to use is, the correct pronoun to use is. But in this case, I would probably leave it. And most of them aren't even doing that well. His run-ins with former classmates, estranged drinking buddies, and prospective lovers challenges his version of events past and present, revealing that recovery is not the happy ending he expected, only a fraught next chapter. Okay, this is the author's debut novel. I don't remember. Are you from Philadelphia? Are you from Philadelphia? Is this autofiction? Fiction has appeared in Harper's, McSweeney's, etc., etc. Student Fellowship in Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center of the Arts in Nebraska City. No mention of Philadelphia. Okay, well, it's a debut novel in any case, so that's fine by me. This comes out in May, so I don't really have to think about it for the moment. I think I have an advanced copy of it, but that is our mail. That is our mail, and the light is definitely returning here. So this is perfectly timed. I think we're going to get a little window where the rain pulls back and the Bean and I can go out and stretch our legs a little. So we have a debut novel, always a thrill. We have Provincials, postcards from the edges of a number of different capitals, famous provincials. And we have Vows by Cheryl Mendelson. How incredible. Oh my. Vows comes out in the early part of May. I know exactly who I would like to review this. And it isn't me. I'll do it, though. If I have to, I'll do it. All right, so there you go. That is the mail. 3 little volumes. More might be coming. There are later deliveries to UPS and FedEx, or sometimes later in the day. And sometimes the delivery system is screwed up completely by persistent rain, because regular drivers will just, they'll fob off their routes, is what they'll do. If the weather forecast is telling them, well, tomorrow's going to be just a long, miserable day of driving rain, they'll fob off their route. They'll call some newbie who wants the route and give it to them instead. And who knows how they're going to do it. I might get packages at 9 tonight. I will not open them. I will set them aside. We will open them together. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.